Okay, today we're training abs. I made another video on training hip flexors. Most of the time when we do abs, we're training a combination of both. You're doing all these 6-minute ab videos, you're doing all these long endurance things. The first thing is number one, train your abs like any other muscle group. What we're talking about with abs is six-pack muscles, okay? If that's what you're focused on, is seeing that six-pack, you got to diet to make sure you lose the fat, but to train that actual rectus abdominis, the six-pack, you train it like any other muscle group. So for people doing all these long, tons of repetitions and things like that, that can work if you're getting to muscular failure, like we would want to do with any other muscle group. Well, I did the video on hip flexors. I train them separately because we want to, again, target certain muscle groups. If I'm doing all these, like if I'm doing a full sit-up and things, and I'm feeling a lot of hip flexors, or I'm doing these things and I'm feeling hip flexors and I'm not getting into my abs, well, maybe one's stronger than the other. So if you're doing an exercise that hits both of them at the same time, one might be getting a workout while the other won't, or you're kind of not getting a full for either of them. So I train them separate. Watch my other video. I'll link to that about the hip flexors. But in this one, we're going to talk about just training your abs. And how do I do that? Right now, I do that using a ball. You can use, I have like an ab mat, a little rounded thing. You can use something like this, right? You can roll this up, right? Just a mat, so that you can just support the lower back. But the main thing is when we're doing this, this allows you to get a little bit more stretch so that you can come up and crunch. Basic crunches. You don't even need this to do it, but I like doing it with this because it adds a little bit more difficulty and adds a little bit of protection for your lower back because it keeps the curve in the spine. So all you're doing, right, is you're just doing a slow repetition like we would anything else, keeping some tension, not relaxing down here, keeping tension, rolling up, and then contracting and tensing that six-pack area at the top. Controlling. I can have my hands here. This is easiest, this is easy, or this is a little bit harder, this is a little bit harder, and then this is really hard, and then you advance by adding weight, okay? Put it on your forehead. So it's like any other muscle group. You train it hard, you train it with progressive overload, adding weight or adding repetitions or adding time under tension. It's a small movement, but I like using something to support on the lower back so I can get the stretch under tension. I'm not stretching and relaxing, I'm keeping tension, not touching the ground, and then coming back up. Again, if you're feeling lots of hip flexors when you're doing your ab exercise, you're not working your abs, you're working your hip flexors. And maybe you're doing that in a way that's not optimal for the hip flexors. Maybe you are, I don't know. But what I'm saying is I train them differently. Watch my other video on hip flexors, and then I train my abs. And what you can do if you're feeling those hip flexors is you can maybe use a band. I have one attached over here. But what you can do is you can put it underneath your legs. If it's attached to something up here, maybe I can get a shot in this video, right, of what I'm talking about. Is I'm here and you can have a band pulling your legs up, and I'm pushing my feet down so that as I come up and down, my hip flexor pulls my knee this way. So if I'm pulling my knee the opposite, if I'm pushing down, my hip flexors turn off. So now I can just use my abs. So if you have trouble, or if you're feeling a lot of hip flexors, like say if you are doing a full sit-up, that's going to be using hip flexors. Try doing it with something pulling you down. This isn't enough tension for me, but that's a way to shut off the hip flexors. So again, if you want to train abs, train them like any other muscle group, train them hard, train them to failure, train them with progressive overload. You can use this tool, or you can have a partner pulling your knees up while you're doing your ab crunches or sit-ups, and you'll really start to feel that middle. Again, if you're not feeling it, if you're feeling your hip flexors, you're using the hip flexors. So again, train them separate. If you want to follow like what I do the high knee, but real basic. You can do leg lifts, you can do all sorts of different exercises. But I like to train and maximize my time with that specific muscle group because, like I said, maybe one group is stronger, I can do more weight, or I can do more time, or I can do some. So if I'm doing both at the same time, then one's getting a workout while the other one isn't, and I'm not maximally getting that full muscular fatigue, which is the whole reason why we're here. If you're there to build the muscle, if you're there to see those abs, if you're there to build the strength, then you've got to take that muscle to failure. And if you're not doing that because you're kind of doing a little bit for one and a little bit for the other, then you're not going to get to where you want to go. So that's ab training. Use a ball, all right? Roll up a mat. Get the ab mat. Maybe I'll link to that. It's a cheap product and it's really, really effective. But that's all you do. And then you just level up. All right, that's it. Ab training, get that 6-pack.